Hello, my name's Jocelyn. This video is about breath control, effectively using your air and not wasting it. The first thing about breath is you have to take a good breath to be able to utilize it. So if you're taking a shallow breath, you're probably not getting a ton of air. If you're taking a really constricted breath, so a constricted breath would be a breath where your throat isn't open. You're taking an air slower, and depending on how much time you have to breathe, you may not get a full breath, even if you feel like, oh, I'm breathing as much as I can in this short little time. So what you can do as a singer is you can try to breathe with a really open throat, and you get air really fast when you do that. The other thing is when you're breathing, you should breathe as low as possible, because the lower you breathe and the deeper you breathe, the more your diaphragm is stretching, which is a good thing. It's creating more room for your lungs to expand, because it's basically shoving down your intestine, which is also good, because if your stomach is tight when you breathe, you're not taking in a good breath. Like, it's just not possible to have your stomach tight and take a good breath. You're going to breathe really high if you do that. So you want your stomach relaxed. You want to be working on stretching your diaphragm. So that's practicing just really big breaths and keeping your shoulder and chest pretty still when you're breathing. Your ribs are going to expand, but it's not going to be like this kind of breath. It's going to be like this kind of breath, and the lower the better when it comes to breathing. So as singers, we waste air usually by spending too much air on things like changing notes, on high notes, and just like wasting it in our tone. So when we change notes, if we went like, oh, sometimes the change between oh, we're actually using a lot more air than we need to. So if you take a tissue, you want to take a thin one. This has a double ply, so I'm gonna cut it in half. And you hold it in front of your mouth, it should be pretty still. If you're singing and the tissue is moving around a lot, like, you're definitely wasting air. The other place that we tend to waste air is on high notes. So when we go, actually, let's go here. This high note doesn't really take any more air than this note. And you could also be doing the opposite. You could be using a lot of air on low notes when you don't need it. And usually we do that to try to make it louder. And you do need more air generally when you sing louder, but to use your air efficiently, it's better to focus your tone as opposed to just try to push out more air. So is a very breathy tone, and it's gonna waste a lot of air. So if you can breathe every 3 beats, perfect. If you can't breathe every 3 beats, you have to focus your tone a little bit more, as opposed to because you're literally like almost just breathing out at that point. What singers also can do is focus on using the minimum of air for that style of singing. So let's say I'm singing just like normal classical. If I'm going, you can take a straw, and you can do it in water, or you can just do the straw. You don't really need more air than that. I have to keep it really even. I have to focus on maintaining a consistent airflow. And using just enough air to make the sound as even as possible. So when you go without the straw, you're not using any more air. When you put your hand in front of your face, it should just be warm. Let's say you're singing a song like Schubert's Ave Maria. Ave Maria. And you want that to be really even, and right now it's not very even or very focused. You can sing it through a straw. Or you could sing it on some other sound that also has consistent airflow. So you can always sing on Z's and THs to get a consistent airflow. Z's are a little bit better. Because you can like hear the air move, and it has pitch. Also works like a TH. THs are tough for me because I feel like my tongue wants to be tight, so are easy for me. But you can use a TH or a Z to work on consistent airflow. And you can use a Z and a TH to sing on anything, any song. Maybe not really high chest voice stuff, but most songs you could use a Z or a TH, just because Z's and THs are small. So if you're singing like, ow, and it's hard to do that on a very small vowel, so I just wouldn't. So you have working with a straw, with or without water. You have working on Z's, singing stuff on Z's or THs. You can also, if you're really struggling, you can just hum through stuff. Humming should be very easy, like very, very easy. If you find even high stuff, if you find it's very hard to sing high stuff, chances are you're using a lot more muscle than you need to. So in general, anything on an M or an NG should be very easy. That's a clue that you're doing something wrong. If it's hard to sing up here or down here on those consonants. So you could just sing on an and basically your nose is like a big straw anyways. And you could plug one. If you want like one straw versus two straws. That's funny. It's funny, I can last more when I use chest voice than head voice. I'm sure this has to do with my technique. I can last longer when I use vibrato versus not vibrato. Also knowing these things about your technique and figuring out like where are there little pockets or little holes in your technique. So what I do is I just pull up a timer. I just pull up a timer, and so let's say I sing on an oo. I can usually last about 20 seconds on an ooh. I'm starting to run out of air a little bit, but I'm gonna keep squeezing my stomach to make sure that I can keep the ooh. Yeah, you see I added some vibrato there that kept me lasting a little bit longer. So let's say we do a higher note, like ooh. Let's say this time I really try to hold it in and I don't talk. Okay, here I had some spit in there. So I lasted like 30 seconds, but that's without words. Like that's not real life singing. So what you can do as a singer, like I would do this and just see how long you can last. Watch that first note. That first note is often where we use way too much air. So we go, and we throw out 10% of our air on the first 1 second of the note. So when you take your breath and you start a phrase, it's always best to try to do a circular breath. So you take a breath, and as soon as you stop breathing, like in, you're immediately singing. So breathe in, and you like try to set on top of the note as opposed to like slamming the note. Is not good. Is an easier way, and you don't waste as much air. If you're like, gosh, I can't hit notes cleanly, sometimes I add a slight N on it. And that helps me like find the note, not waste air, and then go to the vowel. That's a little cheat. Okay. So what you can do to be more practical is, okay, like, you can't stay there forever, like, ba-da-da. You can add, you can do a little riff, and that way you're changing notes, but you're not doing big jumps. Big jumps tend to waste air. And okay, let's do it together. Let's go. Just until you run out. And let's take the circular breath. So we'll breathe together. I'll kind of go like this, and then we sing. When I go like that, and then we just. And you try to make your movements as smooth as possible, because again, we lose air when we change notes sometimes. And so if you're hitting notes hard, we're kind of like pushing out extra air when we don't need to. Okay, here we go. We're gonna take a breath. So we're gonna breathe in. So if you lasted long, great. If you went out at 10 seconds, fine. You can jump out and then jump back in. No shame in that. Okay, so we did. Okay, so you can do that, and you can experiment with that kind of thing. And then the other thing though is, most of the time when you're singing, you have consonants, so you can't just like hang out on an ooh the whole time. And we lose air on consonants. It's not, we don't lose it, we use it. T's, X's, S's, K's, SH, P's, F's, anything plosive, you're going to use air. It doesn't have to be more than the air that you are singing. Sometimes we think we're not saying a consonant and saving air, and sometimes we're not at all doing that. So just, you can play around with that. So let's do the same thing. Actually, let's go a little bit. We'll go a little bit lower. I tend to use more air on lower notes than higher notes sometimes. I don't know if it's because if you sing high, you've worked a lot more on the high notes than low notes. Whatever it is, it's good to change it up so you work every area of your voice. So let's go with this note, and let's add some. Let's add an Ave. So just because we were saying Ave Maria, let's go Ave, Ave, Ave. So the A should be easy. The V, we're using a little bit of air. Ave, Ave. Go ahead and put a good V on there, so at least we're experimenting with it. And then when you go Ave, between the E and the A is a little change. You won't lose too much air, but it's a different vowel, so things shift around in there. Okay, here we go. We're going to take our breath. Stop there. Okay, where did you lose breath? I lost breath. So we have bum 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 bum. I lost breath on the they. Going down to that other note, I used more air than I needed to, like most of the time, until I thought about it and I was like, oh shoot, I don't need that much air going down to that one note. And it is that, sometimes that simple, like just thinking something different. So Ave, you wouldn't emphasize that note anyways. So let's do it one more time. We'll go about 20 seconds. If you can, if you need to take a breath and come back in, no worries. And then just pay attention to where you're losing air, or where you think you're just pushing out a little bit more air than you need to. Are you losing it on the first note? Oh, like when you're starting it, are you sending more air? Are you losing it on the second note when you're going up? Oh, to hit that note, you're like shoving more air out. Are you losing it on the V of ve? Ave, ave. Or are you using it, I was losing it on the fourth note. Ave. I was like pushing it out on that, I had extra air. So I would figure out you're probably losing air on one of these notes. So this time just try to figure out where you're losing air, and then we'll call it. Okay, here we go. We're gonna take a breath together. And we'll stop, but you might have lasted a little bit longer. So when I was doing it on the fourth note, I was kind of adding a h sound that wasted a bunch of air and didn't make any difference. So where were you losing air? And where were you able to save air so you lasted like a few more seconds? And it is, when you're singing a lot, it is that much of a game changer. Like 2 seconds can get you to the end of the phrase. If you didn't have that 2 seconds, you may not be able to hold out the note for a whole note. You may only have a half note. And those things over time really matter. The other thing with breath that's good to practice is if you practice S's and SH's, doing a s or a sh, doing a hard one, sh, or a soft one, sh, and seeing how long you can last and how consistent you can be. When you get to about halfway through your air, so you take a big breath, you're singing, and you're about halfway, you start to feel it. You're like, uh-oh, now if I wasn't gauging my air before, I definitely need to do so now so that I don't run out of breath on this phrase. The thing that most singers do is they mentally think they have less air than they really have left. So when you're practicing on an S or SH, you can hold the S, and right about there, I felt like, oh shoot, I'm starting to run out of air. But what you have to do instead is you have to use your abdominal muscles to squeeze out the last little bit of air. So when you're on your last, I'm gonna blow out most of my air and then show you. So when you're on the last little bit, my stomach is going, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to maintain the S sound without anybody knowing that I'm like, I'm almost out of air, I'm almost out of air. And so you squeeze your stomach and you squeeze your stomach, abdominal muscles, and your diaphragm is contracting to get out the last little bit of air that you have, but maintain the sound. So in context, when you're singing, let's say I get out all my air, I really felt like I had almost no air left, but you try to make it sound as smooth as possible while your stomach is like squeezing all the air out to keep the flow consistent. The flow will want to back off and it'll want to go, it'll want to do that thing, but you can't. You got to go, and then you'll literally, your air's going to drop off a cliff as opposed to like peter out. Okay, I hope this is helpful, informative. You got lots of tools. You have straws, you have Z's, you have S's, you have stopwatches. All these things can help you last a little bit longer, and the more you build on it, the better you're going to get in terms of staying strong to the end of the phrase and lasting a second longer, 2 seconds longer, 5 seconds longer, as long as you take your good breath at the beginning. Okay, all right, good luck.